on my head, I still feel the pain. Every time it's cold and every time it rain, feel like ice water running through my veins. Since the day I got hit, I ain't been the same. See my dog die, they blew out his brains all on the window, feel like window pane. Had to suck
so, damn. Man, me and this nigga Poochie, you hear me? We riding around, you hear me? And, you know, typical night, we trying to jack something, you hear me? We trying to get some money, you dig? Just at a point in my life when, you hear me? I wasn't really hustling like that, you hear me? Just like probably about 2 years before I went and done my jokes, you hear me? So, I had fell off, you hear me? And I wasn't really hustling. But I was like, man, I gotta get back, you know, the way I was. So I'm trying to jack shit and shit so I can build back up and, you know, get myself back to the point I was, you hear me? And cause around the time when Egg had got killed and everything else. Yeah, this around the time when Egg got killed and shit. And if I ever told y'all about Egg, you know, Egg put it in a nigga life, you hear me? But Egg had got killed and shit like that, and you know, we ain't come off straight up on a plug like that, you hear me? So it wasn't really fucked up, but it just wasn't that. It was that the nigga didn't have the bread that a nigga was used to live the lifestyle a nigga was living, right? And so in between that time, you hear me? Like I said, I'm trying to maintain a lifestyle that I was used to. So fuck, I'm like, shit, I gotta go jack shit. I gotta, you know, pull something off. So the nigga Poochie, he had just come back home, remember, from a little joke, shit, dig? There was the first little situation where his cousin had ratted on him or whatever, you hear me? And I told the nigga, leave that nigga alone. Fuck, I really told him, you hear me? Yeah, that boy, you hear me? For real, I told him, yeah, that boy, but he like, you know, he can't do that, that's his family and shit, but I'm like, you dig? I don't give a fuck, you hear me? But if you ain't gonna, you dig, do him, then he need to be dead to you, you hear me? Like, don't fuck with him, you dig? But we gonna get to that later. But anyway, so we riding, you hear me? And I don't know, what's this nigga here, like, I don't know, I never been in that, like, jacking hoes, you hear me? Like, I don't know, I just never was into that. Like, I'm the type of nigga that I don't really like the easy prey, you hear me? I like to get a motherfucker who I feel like it won't be easy. You know, it's kind of crazy to explain, but you know, most people will look for the easy targets, you hear me? But I don't. Like, I feel like that's whole shit. Like, you know, like you pussy or something like that. Like, you really scary, so you just, you know, picking on the weak. Like, I ain't like that, you hear me? I want the challenge, you hear me? So anyway, we ride, we going up St. Bernard, you hear me? Boom, this nigga spot a little hoe, you hear me? The hoe selling pussy. So fuck. He like, man, we can get her, whatever. So fuck. I'm like, whatever, man. So we get her in the car, you hear me? So she like, what y'all trying to do and all that shit like that, you hear me? Now I know this nigga don't got no money. I know he don't got no money. He over here negotiating, trying to get some pussy. And I'm like, man, this man tripping. You hear me? Bitch, you pulled this up on the hoe and you did jack the hoe and we throw out, you hear me? He really trying to fuck the hoe and all this, you hear me? So we ride, turn on Claiborne. So now we riding up the bridge, but I'm driving, you hear me? So fuck. That's when like my spidey tingle and like my senses in my head just say, you know what, fuck all this, boy. You better get up out of here, you hear me? So I pull over under the bridge and I jump out. That nigga like, man, what the fuck? So he jump out, you hear me? Girl sitting in the back seat. So he like, man, what you doing? I'm like, man, you tripping, you hear me? Cause this ain't part of the plan. This ain't what we discussed, nigga. We supposed to be jacking shit. You trying to fuck, you hear me? He like, man, son, you tripping, nigga. Don't get a little pussy and then we gonna, you hear me? We gonna jack the hoe, whatever. I'm like, man, I ain't doing all that, son. You hear me? I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm putting all this together, and I'm like, nigga gonna fuck around and flunk out when we really just supposed to be jacking this hoe and come out with a whole rape charge and everything else, you hear me? Cause once you jack this hoe out the pussy and you take her money, you hear me? We not, you hear me? This hoe be hollering we raped her and shit, so I don't want to be no part of that shit, you hear me? I'm like, you do you and fuck with me later, you hear me? He like, man, you tripping, man, come on, get back in the car. I'm like, no, you hear me? As long as you gon' continue on with that shit and try to fuck this hoe, I'm good, son. You hear me? We ain't just gonna jack this hoe, and you hear me? And so now after all that, it was just like really not a plan. It's over with. I don't even want to jack this hoe or none of that no more now, you hear me? Cause it's just all, you hear me? So girl, she trying to figure out like what's going on. She like, what y'all gonna do? And he trying to tell her hold up, and I'm like, man, go handle your business, son. I'm good. Like he had them blew me for the night, you hear me? And so like I say, I keep on going. This nigga here keep on coming on side me and shit like that, you hear me? So that nigga pull up, we damn near like, he done got damn near by Ursuline, like yeah, Paris Orleans by Ursuline, like you hear me? And so this when this nigga finally, he jacked the hoe. So this nigga talking about some, bitch up and give me your purse and all this. The bitch jump out talking about, man, you gonna do that, or whatever like that. Man, I'm like, man, this nigga here stupid, you hear me? Like, he ain't pissed me off, son, cause I'm like, dog, just supposed to cancel this shit, you hear me? And then, when we go through the purse, the bitch ain't even have nothing, son, you hear me? The bitch ain't even have nothing, son. So it was like, my senses was right. This was a bunk mission, and that's like, I knew it. So before we even went through it, I was trying to cancel the shit. He ain't want to listen, you hear me? So now, you done jacked this whole, got this whole hollering and screaming on big ass Claiborne. You hear me talking about, man, you gonna jack me out my purse, you gonna take my purse and all this. That's fucked up, man. You niggas some hoes and all this shit like this. We driving off. I'm like, man, this will probably getting a license plate, everything, man. You tripping, son. Like, man, you stupid or whatever. He like, man, you tripping, son. You fucked it up. You won't get out the car and all that. Cause I'm like, dog, I ain't no raper man, son. Like, that ain't me. That ain't my jacket, son. I don't jack hoes out pussy. You hear me? I fuck hoes that won't fuck me. You hear me? I don't fuck hoes that I wanna fuck like on some shit. Like, you hear me? Like, ooh, I want that hoe. I'm about to take that pussy. No. I like that bitch like me. You hear me? She jacked out. That's the type of bitches I fuck. I don't fuck no hoe like, man, I'm about to, you hear me? Strong on no pussy or finesse a bitch. I don't do all that shit, son. I ain't gotta do it. You hear me? Never did and I never will, son. You hear me? So that shit had just blew it for me. You hear me? So later on in life, this is what this nigga sitting down now for. You hear me? He's sitting in the can right now in Angola. He fucking around with his cousin again. I know I had told y'all about this, but I'm gonna just tell it again. He's sitting down because he wanna fuck with his cousin. Same plea. Getting some pussy out the hoe and jacking the hoe, right? They on chef now though. Nigga fuck the hoe or whatever. They both fuck the hoe. Then up on the hoe and tell the hoe, you know, give them everything or whatever like that. Then they threw the bitch out the moving car. All the shit on camera, everything. The shit was all on Nola.com, everything, you hear me? Fucking pushed the hoe out of moving car and all that. Son, they had so many charges, son. That nigga still locked up. And the whole part that blew me with him with this one was that you did it again with a known rat. You know this nigga a rat. You hear me? And guess what? Y'all think that nigga was like, well, this time I'm gonna play it silent. No, that nigga ratted again. Told them people everything. You hear me? Everything. About the little previous robbery they did that night and everything. You hear me? Told them everything, son. Now that nigga lost his family, his girl married, his kid, you know what I'm saying? All that shit, son. And a nigga supposed to think I'm supposed to be like, well, shit, that's my nigga, I'm supposed to. No, I kept it all the way silent with it and told him the real, son. You flunked out, you crashed out, don't expect me to send you nothing, none of that, my nigga. You hear me? A few times he reached out to me and asked me to, you know, check on this girl and all that, see what's up with her. I did that, you hear me? And let him know, man, she done got married, she moved on, brother. And I don't blame her, son. You hear me? Like, for real. Like, all y'all niggas that do that shit, son, when y'all got something good going on and y'all flunk out and throw it away, son, don't get mad. For real, don't get mad, son. That's your own fault. You made that bed, nigga, lay in it, you hear me? And that's just how I had to tell him. You did. Like, some shit, you just gotta think. Like, you really gotta think. You gotta think about everything. You can't just think one way. You gotta think about everything. You hear me? The good, the bad, the other, all that. You gotta think about all that shit, son. Cause every action got consequences. You hear me? Everything you do, every choice you make, got consequences behind it. Whether it's good or bad, they got consequences. You hear me? And I don't think a lot of people think about that when they doing shit. And that's why they get fucked up. You hear me? For real though. Son, but yeah, I don't give a fuck. Nigga called me, oh man, that nigga that was scary. Man, you fuck, no. To me, I made the right choice, jumping out that fucking car. You hear me? If the mission was good, man, I'm rolling 10 toes down. But if I feel like the mission ain't right, man, count me out, son. I don't give a fuck how a nigga feel, son. I don't give a fuck what nigga say I'm a hoe or whatever. We can fight, nigga. The mission ain't right to me, I'm out. Count me the fuck out, son. For real. Like, that's, to me, that's how I lasted so long out here, son. Not trying to please nobody or make nobody accept who, you hear me? I'm is who I'm is, son. I'ma always be that, you hear me? If a nigga don't like what I do, fuck him. You hear me? And a lot of you niggas, that's what y'all need to stand on, son. Stop trying to be down, son. You hear me? Stop trying to be down, my nigga. That shit don't do nothing for you, son. You trying to be down or have you in a situation that you ain't even built for, you ain't prepared for, my nigga. You hear me? Because that really ain't you. You trying to fit in. You trying to be cool. You hear me? Never was me and ain't gonna never be me. So you hear me? That was just like I said, telling y'all about a situation I was in and I ain't feel comfortable. And I was like, you know what? I'm out of here, son. A lot of people really just don't have the balls to say that, like, man, I ain't with this shit. And, you know, and exclude themselves from that situation. Like, yeah, I'm telling you, you better grow up here. And when you feel like this ain't for you, let a nigga know, man, this ain't for me. I don't care what it is, son. If it ain't you, it just ain't you, son. And the type of nigga I'm in, I always respected a nigga that had the heart to tell me, man, I ain't with that shit, and go ahead. Then a nigga that claim to be with it, and then we go do it, and then you turn, you know what I'm saying, you flip on a nigga. Cause the whole while you really wasn't with it, but you acting like you was, and now you singing. Come on, man, just go ahead and get the fuck, you hear me? For real though, son. So once again, always make good decisions in life. Please make the right choices, you hear me? And don't try to be down. Be yourself, my nigga. Always be real with yourself. You don't be real with nobody else in life. Be real with yourself. Real talk.